Hello, everyone. Good evening. Hope everyone is doing well today. Sorry about this weird lighting going on. I'm still a little under the weather, so forgive me. Forgive my voice, but I did not want to miss another week. Hope everyone is doing great. Happy Wellness Wednesday. And let me know where you're joining me from in the chat. I'd love to greet you and say hello. It's been a while. So, just to catch up on where we are wrapping up the 10 Commandments of Black Economic Power. We are on Chapter 9, Part 2. And so, tonight, we're going to cover page 172 through 179. And I'm going to do my best to hang in there because many of you might know, or you may not know, like I have asthma. So, he has been giving me the blues these past few days. So, um, I am trying to get my breathing back under control. So we will jump in for tonight. So welcome back. And if you're new here, welcome as well. So we're going to start out on page 172. And the subject matter here is why every Black man needs to start a business. And this is something that I was taught growing up by my own dad, the importance of having your own business. And so let's see. He says on page 172, he says, he does not believe that whites, Asians, or anyone else will ever have an interest in helping Black men and women become successful, which is why it's our responsibility to do so. And, he talks about this is where ownership comes into play. And when we own something, we get to design the culture, the values, and the direction of the thing that we own, which is so beautiful because, we're also creative. Hey, Natasha, I'm so happy you're here. Thank you for coming and always supporting. And then he talks about on page 173 that every Black child in America should be taught to start his or her own business by the age of 12. And I definitely agree with that. That's something that, again, I was taught. But you know what? So many of us are not taught that. A lot of us are taught to just go out and get a job. And I know we've talked about this before. And there's nothing wrong with getting a job, right? Because they can also be like one of your main investors in your business that you may be trying to build. And but one of the key things here about us starting our own businesses is that we can begin to create our own infrastructures. So, and this is so key in us being able to employ one another and creating environments where we can thrive and all be successful together. And so he says that if Black people can employ Black people, more Black people will have access to high quality economic possibilities, which I completely agree with that. I know that, when I was in hiring positions, I definitely looked out for my people. Not that, I mean, I had a very diverse staff, but I made it a point to, look out for my folks because who else is going to do it, right? And then he goes on to talk about this next subject is wealth is a team sport and most of your teammates are not yet alive. And, that really hit me hard because it's true. It's like, we are creating this wealth now, but really it's a possibility that we won't be able to use all of it, right? And we'll have something to pass on to the next generation. And I just think back to like my grandparents and what they were able to set up for, like my parents' generation, and then what my parents my parents, aunts and uncles were able to set up for our generation. And then now the torch has been passed to us. And so the question is that we always have to ask ourselves is what legacy are we leaving behind? And so, and how are we doing this as a team? Because I know historically we haven't always worked together as a people. And so, he on page 174, he goes on to talk about that true wealth building is not an activity for short-sighted individuals. So Dr. Boyce, hey Dorielle, miss you too. Thank you for coming back. It's good to see you. Hopefully I can make it through the whole 30 minutes here with y'all and not have a whole coughing situation. But yes, I am so happy to see you. Hope you are doing fantastic. All right. So, where were we? Oh, Dr. Boyce on one of his morning classes, he was talking about, wealth has to do with, like distance, right? Like time and speed or whatever the equation is for distance, right? And I was just like, that is so true. Like, that African proverb says, if you want to go fast, go alone, but if you want to go farther, go together. And I think that's so crucial in our community is working together as a team and then having time. That's what's going to help us to build lasting wealth over time. In addition to estate planning, which he talks about as well. And I'm very passionate about estate planning. I did my first trust in 2016. And the wonderful thing about, having a trust is that as your assets grow, you can always add to your trust. Oh girl, I'm gonna need you to go to bed after this. I love it. Wealthy tea. Yes, that is awesome. Um, so I think that is so crucial in order for us to be able to leave those lasting legacies that we have, our estate plans in place as well as really specific instructions to make sure that that wealth is not squandered. Because I know one thing that my grandfather did for my mom and her siblings is that he bought them all homes, like literally like seven. It was like seven houses in New Orleans, and I wish like my mom and her siblings hadn't sold their house because it was in a historic district in New Orleans, and I was like, that house is worth mega money now. But it's like my grandfather passed on valuable skills, but I wonder like what kind of conversations he had with his kids because some of them they got it down pat. They're doing good, and others, mm-mm. So I don't know if the knowledge, how the knowledge was passed, because I talked to my mom, I talked to my uncle, and it's two different stories. So that's really important too, is like you might create wealth for your children, but are you teaching them how to maintain it, right? Or whoever your legacy is. Like for me, it's my niece and nephews. Hi, Jen. Thank you for coming. So I know Jen and Natasha and Dorio through her classroom. I know you all are having conversations with, either your children or young people about wealth preservation. And so that's so important because you could be handed $1 million, $100,000, whatever, but if you don't know how to handle it properly, then it doesn't make a difference. So, one thing that he talked about, I love this story that he just, this example he gave where his grandmother saved $80,000 over her lifetime, and then how his mom, I believe, was able to give him $15,000 to go ahead and invest it. And now over time, I guess his grandmother, she never invested, but now over time, that money has been able to multiply over multiple generations. So I think that is so crucial. Um, but I like how he says, just tee up the ball for your descendants and do the best that you can. And he says, this I totally agree with this. He says, well, this is page 175. What you do not want to do is leave them nothing, excuse me, to work with. Too many of our families put their children in the horrific position of having to create something out of nothing. As far as I'm concerned, that's child abuse. So, yes, having to start over from scratch is not where we want this next generation to be. Like my goal, like I always tell y'all in every live, like one of my major goals is to make sure that my niece and two nephews never have to take a student loan, never have to rent. Like if we can avoid that by all costs, that's the key. And so I'm curious, let me know in the chat, like what is some of your whys? Like why are you building your wealth? And so thanks, Chelsea. um what are some of your goals? I'm curious. I always like to hear other people's goals so I can cheer you on and pray for you to meet your generational wealth goals. So let me know in the chat. I want to read some of those as we go through. So now moving on to page 176. And if y'all have anything you want to add from these pages, definitely feel free to add your comments. Like I said, I'm still a little bit under the weather, but I did not want to postpone again because I want us to finish our this book, and then we're gonna start reading my book. But just a quick announcement, since we have so many of you in here now, welcome back everyone. We're gonna be doing a trivia, I believe, in 3 weeks. So we'll finish out Commandment 10, and then we're going to do a trivia. And so we'll be doing some prizes for that. And I know Chelsea is giving a prize. I'm giving away one of my books because that's the next book we're going to read. And it'll be a game. Like, I have some flashcards that go with the 10 Commandments. So make sure you get ready for the trivia because I love a game. Oh, this is exciting, Doriel. Okay, let's put this up. So Doriel is leaving her legacy so her family can purchase land and income producing property. I love that. I have a friend of mine, her and her sisters, they created a family compound where they can all retire to. And so that's phenomenal, right? Because it could be a place where, her and her family can live, be paid off. Everybody live, kind of rent free, just worry about property taxes and insurance. And it can also be a place that generates income. So that is beautiful. So let's go to page 176, but keep it coming. I would love to see what y'all different legacies are, and why you do what you do, because that's important. It's also important to decree and declare it out loud, right? Because there's life and death in the power of the tongue. And so when you speak something out loud and you declare something, that puts it into motion. So on page 176, he says, wealthy families groom their children to be CEOs, not employees. And I really love that. And, it's so funny because my dad always used to say, you got to have a job and a hustle. And what he meant by that, so my dad always had a business. He was always starting a business. And then my mom always had a steady job and, kind of helped out with taxes. So, it's one thing, to teach your children or tell your children that you should start a business, but where are they learning the skills to run a successful business? I think that is key. And I think that's why Black businesses don't start as fast and don't stay in business as long, because we're not necessarily groomed from young to be successful business owners. It's kind of like you're pulling yourself up by your bootstraps and figuring it out as you go. Hey, Terry, welcome back. Well, welcome, Deborah. Yes, I didn't want to miss another one. I may cough a little bit, y'all, but we are here and we're doing this. So we're on page 176. And he's talking about, being groomed to be a CEO. And I think that is a special skill set. And I don't think that if you don't have a parent in the home that already has that skill set and you're watching them, watching them and learning from what they're doing from young, you're just kind of pulling yourself up by your bootstraps, right? Or unless you're in some type of incubator or you have an amazing coach. And he talks about how being a CEO requires a specialized type of education. And he talks about the culture being you have to be able to know how to nurture relationships, seek capital, preserve assets, delegate tasks, and many other things. And we do not learn that in school because basically, in our traditional K through 12 education, you're learning how to be an employee. Let's just keep it real, right? So if you just came in, I was just asking everyone, what is the reason why you're building your legacy for the next generation? So I would love to hear what you think in the chat. And like he said, the building of a Black CEO starts in childhood. It really, really does, right? And so where are our children getting this education from if they're not getting it in the K through 12 system? So, like, what are some of y'all thoughts about that? Like, where should our children be learning these CEO skills if they're not getting them in traditional K through 12 education? So, I know one thing my sister does is that she brings her children to work with her. So, she is a CEO, she runs her own hair salon. And every now and then, the kids are in there. The older kids, they might be paid to help her to do certain tasks, right? Not necessarily hair, but like maybe clean up or organize things so they see what it's like to run a business. There's all different aspects. So here's some things that Dr. Boyce recommends on starting on page 177. He says a child who is built to be the CEO of a family business must possess the following skills. He talks about family being first, right? And they got to understand why it's important to be a part of that family business and preserve it, right? Exactly. Yes, Dorio. Taking if you have a business and you have young people in your family, take them with you. Um, I had the privilege. One of my cousins, she's not a child, but she's a young adult. She actually came to one of my webinars, and she actually got to see what I do, and I love actually working with my younger cousins, and exposing them to what I do and how it may be able to be of assistance to them. Because and I've actually been able to help multiple generations in my own family, like my mom's generation, my cousins that are younger than me. I have a lot of cousins that are significantly younger than me. So that's a blessing to be able to show them what I do, and then in turn be able to use the skills that I have to help them. So that's definitely been a blessing. Yep. And so that's true, Jen. So at home, teaching them CEO skills, right? Thank you for posting, Jen. I appreciate it. The other thing is relationship management skills. Now, this is something that I wish I had learned some better skills in terms of relationship management. I definitely have a strong work ethic, but sometimes I will focus more on work than maintaining relationships. So, how do y'all feel? I want to know from y'all. Like, do you feel like you learn relationship management skills from home, or how did you learn relationship management skills? Because that's something that I've always struggled with personally. And so I always wonder, like, how do people come out like being so great with relationships? Because like my dad had friends and stuff like his poker and domino buddies, but like men men's relationships and women's relationships are different. But my mom was pretty much a loner. I mean, she had like, church friends and stuff, but she wasn't, she didn't have like a lot of friends. So I guess I just kind of winged it. Yeah, for real, Terry, living life experience. I made a lot of mistakes because I was like, I don't know that I had good examples. Like, not that it was bad examples, but I didn't really have a lot of examples to look at. Like, I had my grandmother and she had, her cousins and stuff that she would always visit, and she was very loving towards our family members. But yeah, I don't know. I'm just like, So relationship management is definitely important in businesses because they say your network is your net worth. And then he talks about there should be a bed of wealth and assets to ensure that all children's bills are paid in adulthood. Because guess what? If your family have a trust for you, um, then if let's say you go to college and you can't find a job, well, guess what? It really doesn't matter because your family has a nest egg for you, and you have that what Dr. Boyce calls that effing money, right? Like my husband and I were talking about that the other day, like where if you had so much money and you get fed up at work and you could be like, well, F you, I don't need this job. I can I kind of I did have me some F you money, and I quit in 2021. I was like, all right, I'm out. Yeah, y'all can keep this. So best decision I ever made. So I definitely highly recommend FU money. Like, so if you need to get off the plantation, you can throw up those deuces. And so I think that's really, really important too for for young people, but they also got to know how to manage it. It can't just be given without instructions and really understanding the value of what they have. And then he talks about a code of ethics and conduct. That's on page 178. Yeah, Terry, girl. I heard Dr. Boyce say it that if you buddy where it's like you got money, like let's say you have your passive income, your options are working good, you got your stocks or whatever it is you have, your passive income. And you could be like, you know what? I don't really need this job. I'm out. You just throw up the deuces. And so, one day I'm gonna help my husband throw up the deuces. I'm trying. I'm working hard at it, but it takes time sometimes. So he talked about the code of ethics and minimizing distractions. So that's really important too, like making sure, because if you have children and you have a trust, you can actually put clauses in your trust that are very specific, like the child can't be on drugs, they have to be of a certain age, how the money is distributed. So you could be very, very specific just so you can maintain your family wealth. And then he talks about in addition to relationship management, the ability to delegate. Now, I have been told by people I know that I'm the delegation queen. And I don't have no problem delegating. Listen, you know what I mean? I am here for the delegation. Okay. Anybody here have issues with delegating? I don't know. I feel like I'm a natural at it. And I have definitely been told that. Because I'm like, I understand what my role is and what my zone of genius is, but I also recognize other people's zone of genius. And I've never been that person to feel like if I don't do it, no, that's a lie. I have felt like that before. But if somebody has a skill and a talent, I am very happy to hand something over to them versus me carrying a burden, something that, especially if it's not my zone of genius. And this is important for all of us CEOs and future CEOs that you make sure that you have people in place that they're working in their zone of genius. And that's how everyone stays happy and productive. And then he goes on to talk about how our children have to value Blackness in their role and being a resource for the Black community. And I think that was instilled in me early on because I went to an all Black private school in Los Angeles, and it was a wonderful experience. We all learned 1 year above grade level. I believe the director or principal, as I guess is the equivalent. She lived in Africa before she started the school, so everything was about Black history. So we learned how to be proud of who we were, and so I grew up in a Black and Mexican neighborhood in Inglewood, so I always was around my people. Now I was also in multicultural environment, so I know how to. I don't want to say, well, I can code switch, but I was always around different types of people. Like I have my aunts are Filipino, so I grew up in Filipino culture. Yeah, I just grew up around everybody. I went to a predominantly white church, so I was like living in a Black Mexican neighborhood, going to Black school, white church, Asian aunties. So it does help in life, because I can flow back and forth between many different types of people. But I was always taught to be proud of who I was, and I think that is so foundational. And on the other hand, I have friends whose parents moved them out of the hood to live in the suburbs because, of course, to get away from gang violence and, more affordable homes and things of that nature. But I also see how it impacted them in kind of in certain situations, depending on how early they moved out there, impacted their identity and who they saw themselves to be. So, Jen, I get that. It can be difficult to delegate to adults, right? But if you have people that are surrounding you that believe in your mission, they'll be happy to help you out. And then the last point He says on page 179, excuse me, you have to groom and train the child to take over the business when you're done. That is the key right there. We got to groom and train these children. And even if they don't necessarily take over our businesses specifically, at least they have the skills to start and run their own business with what they're passionate about. I think that's the key right there. So one thing that I've done personally is since I'm not near my niece and nephews anymore, we don't live in the same state, I should say, is that I signed up to be a mentor to a young person here in New York because I definitely believe I used to be a part of NABA, which is National Association of Black Accountants. And the motto was lifting as we climb. And that was instilled in me. And it's still important to me to this day because, you know, I have so many experiences. I have, you know, a lot of different resources. And we don't want to be gatekeepers, y'all. We want to be able to pour out and give that to the next generation so that they can succeed, you know, just like we've succeeded. And so, you know, if you don't have young people to pour into, or even if you do and you have that capacity to be a mentor, and just pass on some of the experiences that you've had, because, you know, I can venture to say I wouldn't be where I am without all the help of my mentors. And I had a lot of people pouring into me when I was younger. So I just want to be a vessel and give back to our community, give back to our young people. So I signed up to be a mentor with the National African American Insurance Association. So anything I can do to reach back, lifting as we climb, because if we live in the abundance mentality, I believe that there is more than enough for everybody. There's no competition. Nobody can do what you do the way that you do it. And so if we can, you know, find some young people to pour into, because if you just change one person's lives, you never know how many lives will be impacted by that. And so that is a wrap on chapter 9. If anyone has any thoughts or questions. Thank you, Terry. Yes, I am a big believer in reaching back and giving. So if you just got here, last announcement, we're going to be doing trivia in about 2 weeks. So next week we're going to do half of Commandment 10, which is ownership is the key to power. And then the following week we'll wrap that up and then we'll do our trivia. So I have the flashcards that go with the book, and we're going to be doing a contest. So make sure that you get your notes ready. And I'll be giving away a prize. I know Chelsea has donated a prize. And so get ready. Make sure you have read the book so that you can play to win. You have to be in the chat. Okay. It said if I have an org with for sharing info. Okay, awesome, Dorio. Yeah, send that my way. I would love to learn more about it. All right, y'all. Well, I am going to rest now, but I'll probably jump into Dr. Boyce's Powernomics training. So if you all want to join us, Dr. Boyce is doing Powernomics training tonight. Let me see if I can put it in the notes for those of you who want to join but don't have the info. So hang tight. I know it's on my phone. I think hopefully this is the right link. I'll put it. Thanks, Jen. I finally got my medication today. I'm like, oh my gosh. Oh dear. Okay, that was weird. That's the Zoom link, but it's his Powernomics training that is about to happen in 1 minute. Well, thank you all for coming back. Welcome back. I'll see you next week for Commandment 10 and sweet dreams. Love you all. Bye. Good night.